The following competition comes from the Tanakh, our Bible, from the book of 1 Kings, chapter 18. I share with you this story, some of you may know, of Elijah versus the prophets of Baal. As you're listening to this story, what ritual therein do you find to be most surprising or foreign or strange? Elijah the prophet had a challenging task before him. The Israelites were turning away from God and being lured to follow Baal, a popular false god of the time. So Elijah devised a competition to demonstrate to the people that Baal is a false god, and only Adonai Hu Ha-Elohim, the Eternal One, alone is God. The procedure? Let 2 young bulls be taken, one for the prophets of Baal, one for Elijah. Each prepare and lay out the bull on the wood on the altar, but do not apply the fire. Let each team invoke their God by name, and whoever responds with fire, that one is God. All the people agreed to the terms of the competition. So the Baalites took and prepared their bull and invoked Baal by name from morning until noon. "Oh, Baal, answer us!" But no response came. No sound and certainly no fire. So they performed a hopping dance on the altar. And then Elijah mocked them, saying, "Shout louder, shout louder. After all, he's a god, but he may be in a conversation, he may be detained, or he may be on a journey, or perhaps he's asleep and will wake up." The followers of Baal shouted louder and cut themselves with knives and spears according to their practice until the blood streamed over them. They kept raving, but there was no sound, no response from Baal. Then Elijah brought all the people close. He set up his altar and made a trench about it. He laid out the wool and he laid out the wood and prepared the bull and laid it on the wood. 3 times he had 4 jars of water poured over the offering and the wood. The water was so plentiful it ran down the sides of the altar and it filled the trench. Elijah called out to God, asking God to answer him. "May this people may know that you, the Eternal One, is our God." And then fire from the Eternal descended and consumed the burnt offering, the wood, the stones, and the earth, and it licked up the water that was in the trench. When the people saw this, they flung themselves on their faces and cried out, "Adonai Hu Ha-Elohim, the Eternal One alone is God." A fascinating, if not fantastical, story to teach the Israelites to turn away from false gods and their practices and embrace and follow only God. The ritual in this story, which struck me as strange and a little gory, is the part where the followers of Baal actually cut themselves in their rave until they bleed. We find a form of this word, vayit godedu, in our Torah portion this week, re'eh. The Israelites are prohibited to engage in such a ritual behavior. In chapter 14 of our Torah portion this week, we read, "You are children of the Eternal your God. You shall not cut yourselves. Lo tit godedu for the dead." The late Rabbi Pinchas Peli, who was a professor at Ben-Gurion University and Torah Today columnist for the Jerusalem Post, points out a totally different meaning for the expression of lo tit godedu. In Sifrei, which is a midrashic commentary to Deuteronomy, the rabbis suggest lo tit godedu to mean you shall not cut yourselves up into factions and splinter groups, but rather be bound together in one bond. I love how Midrash can just play on one word or one phrase and take the text in an entirely different direction. The lesson that the rabbis from Sifrei are teaching us is that Jewish people should not divide ourselves into multiple institutions and factions. We should stay together as one family. The message is one of Jewish unity. Jewish unity, what does that look like? With what word or expression might we finish the sentence, all Jews fill in the blank. Anybody have any ideas? You could write it in the chat if you're thinking of it. All Jews blank. Well, we don't all follow the Torah the same way. We don't all eat one food. I was thinking, well, maybe it's challah. Well, even in places like, we think of challah, that's the Ashkenazic East European custom, but in places like Iran, it's just bread, it's pita. We don't all believe in God. We don't all embrace the state of Israel identically. Even the unity government in Israel is comprised of multiple factions. So what might unite us? Rabbi Peli mentions Jewish unity surrounding the Holocaust. Gates of the concentration camps were opened up equally for all Jews. At the gates, no one asked what kind of Jew one was. The Hasid and the atheist, the Orthodox, conservative and reformed, the socialist and the capitalist, the Ashkenazi and the Sephardi, all went through those gates together. Rabbi Peli's challenge back in 1988 when he commented in Torah Today column, referring to the Holocaust, is that the only model that the Jew can present today for exemplifying Jewish unity? What are the goals toward which we are all moving as a people? In an article in E-Jewish Philanthropy from February of this past year, I learned about something called our Common Destiny Project. The project was created to strengthen and unify Jews throughout the world. Our Common Destiny is a joint venture between the Israeli Ministry of Diaspora Affairs and the Genesis Philanthropy Group under the auspices of the Office of Israel's President, who at the time was occupied by Reuven Rivlin. Over more than a year, project members worked on a declaration of principles with input from scholars as well as thousands of Jews around the world through an online survey. And you can still go there today to Our Common Destiny and fill in the survey prioritizing what you think all Jews should do toward unity. And what resulted was the declaration of our common destiny. The document is about 4 pages long, and it embraces 5 principles. It even says on the website that it's in draft form. But here are the 5 principles. The safety and security of every Jew and the state of Israel, Jews' mutual responsibility toward one another, a strengthened Jewish identity by living through Jewish values, the call for the Jewish people to serve as a light unto the nations, and Jews helping the world through tangible contributions to society in fields such as science and technology. Approximately 115 organizations are part of our Common Destiny Project, which says that it's still in formation. And 2 of those groups include the Union of Reform Judaism and the Israel Movement for Progressive Judaism. Over 30 years after Rabbi Peli's pointing out that all that might unify us is the Holocaust, perhaps this is good news. Keeping in mind the lesson of the rabbis in Sifrei Lo Titgodedu, not to cut ourselves into factions, our Common Destiny Project acknowledges that as Jews, as a Jewish people, we are comprised of diverse groups, and the goal is to strengthen us, differences aside. Although our ancestry and our journeys may be different, together we form one people. Our connection to a common past, sacred texts, traditions, and shared aspirations link us all, while at the same time leave enough room for diverse interpretations that flow from the depths of our shared history and give us strength. Lately, many of us are hearing more about diversity, not just in our villages, towns, cities, and country, but also within the Jewish community. The Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism defines what we mean by diversity. North American Jews have always come from different backgrounds in terms of their faith, disabilities, race and ethnicity, gender, sexuality, and more. For all North American populations, including Jews, these forms of diversity are increasingly true among younger generations. we need to start, if we have not already, seeing the diversity within the group we call us. Us is diverse. Us includes interfaith and intermarried couples and families. We learn that 71% of non-Orthodox Jewish marriages in the United States have been interfaith since the year 2000. Overall, the Jewish rate of intermarriage in the U.S. has exceeded 50%. Us includes Jews with disabilities. Jews with disabilities account for 20% of our community. Us includes Jews of color and multiracial families. At least 12 to 15% of Jews in the United States identify as Jews of color, of African, Latinx, Asian, or mixed race descent. And 10% of U.S. Jews are of Mizrahi, or Sephardic heritage. Us includes LGBTQ plus Jews, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and or queer Jews. Approximately 10% of North American Jewry identifies as part of the LGBTQ plus community. And if we look at the age range between 18 and 29, that percentage increases to 20%. And that doesn't even count those who don't openly identify as such. This diversity is who we are. And so we need to continue to ask ourselves questions such as, how are we inclusive of our Jewish families with a non-Jewish member? How are we making it accessible for those of us with disabilities to participate in the life of the synagogue? How are we weaving into the culture of our synagogue Jewish music, food, customs, etc. from multiple races? How are we supporting those of us who identify as LGBTQ plus in our families? We need to continue to seek answers with members of each of these diverse identities within our community. I'm in the midst of a series of Jewish race, equity, diversity, and inclusion workshops that are sponsored by the Union for Reform Judaism. Several black individuals in the group have shared similar stories of how when they walked into the synagogue, they were questioned, "Why are you here?" as if they weren't there for Shabbat, or assumed that they were with the catering company rather than for the bar mitzvah. Or they were asked if they converted, assuming that they were outsiders and not born Jewish. Questions and probes like these don't embrace the message of lo titgo to do, not to faction ourselves. If we're striving for Jewish unity, we must see our Jewish selves as including all the diversity therein. The lo titgo to do, don't let the diversity within us become an outlet to divide us. There's a teaching in the Mishnah that says, therefore Adam, which means human, was created alone to teach you that due to the importance of maintaining peace among people, so that no one person will say to another, my parent is greater than your parent. When a person stamps coins with one seal, they are all similar to each other. But when the ruler of rulers, the Holy One who is blessed, stamped each human, each Adam, with the seal of the first human, not one of them is similar to another. Therefore, everyone is obligated to say, the world was created for me. Immediately following the verse in our Torah portion in which we read the words, lo titgo to do not cut yourselves up into factions, we read, Ki am kadosh atah, for you are a holy people. As we strive for Jewish unity and values of our common destiny, such as security and well-being of every Jew, mutual responsibility toward one another, strengthening Jewish identity and values, acting as a light into the nations, contributing to the development and improvement of our world, let us remember that all the diversity within us is us. Then may we truly be called an Am Kadosh, a holy people. Shabbat Shalom.